Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing what we do best, taking a stack of specific data and really digging in to find the hidden story. Our focus today is maybe a bit unexpected, but a pretty dynamic market. Ventilating storm doors. We've got this detailed market intelligence here, sales revenue, growth projections, 2021 right through to 2033. It's all from cognitive market research. And our mission, as always, is to pull out the key insights. Understand the global picture, the regional hotspots, and what these numbers really mean for this market over the next, 10 years or so. Think of it as your shortcut to getting up to speed on this corner of the building world. And here to help us navigate the figures and connect the dots is our expert guide.
Glad to be here. Yeah, looking at this report, the place to start is definitely the big picture globally. Back in 2021, the market revenue for these stores was $2,093.41 million.
Okay, almost $2.1 billion. That's our baseline then. So where does the data say this market is heading? What's the trajectory look like?
Well, the projections show pretty steady upward movement. Looking ahead, the forecast puts the global figure at $564 million by 2025.
Right.
And then, pushing further out to 2033, the revenue is projected to hit $846.31 million. So over that whole period, 2021 to 2033, this works out to a compound annual growth rate, a CGR of 5.2%.
5.2% CAGR. Wow. Okay, that's more than just ticking along, isn't it? That feels like significant sustained expansion over a decade. What does that big number tell us about the overall health of this market?
It really indicates, according to this source anyway, that there's this projected increase in global demand, a CAGR like 5.2% for, a pretty specific product like this over 12 years. It suggests it's not just niche anymore. It's becoming more integrated into building trends, maybe consumer needs worldwide.
That's fascinating. It's easy to overlook these kinds of markets, but clearly there's a lot going on under the surface. Right. Let's start peeling back the layers then, region by region. The data gives us North America first. What's the picture there?
Yeah, North America is a really substantial piece of that global pie. It generated, $755.722 million in revenue in 2021. Looking forward, that's expected to climb to $897.4 million in 2025, and then reach $1,261.59 million by 2033. The regional CAGR for North America comes in at 4.35%.
Okay, 4.35%. So a big market, definitely, but that growth rate is actually a bit lower than the global average of 5.2% we just heard. This is where it gets really interesting, though. When you dig into the countries within North America, how do they stack up? Any big differences in size or growth?
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. it dominates in terms of sheer size. It clocked in at 588.788 million in 2021, and that's projected to grow to 946.192 million by 2033. Its CAGR, though, is 4.007%, so slightly below the North American average and, further below the global one.
Yeah.
But look at Canada and Mexico. They actually show faster projected growth. Canada's market was about $107 million in 2021, forecast to reach over $205 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of 5.528%, higher than the U.S. And Mexico starts smaller, around $60 million in 2021, but it's expected to almost double to nearly $110 million by 2033. Its CAGR is 5.286%. Also strong. So yeah, while the U.S. is the volume leader, the data suggests maybe there are stronger drivers, demand or adoption factors, pushing growth a bit faster in Canada and Mexico right now.
The difference is really intriguing. Yeah, Canada and Mexico outpacing the U.S. growth rate there. Okay, let's shift focus. Let's hop across the Atlantic to Europe. What's the market intelligence telling us about ventilating storm doors over there?
Europe's another really significant market globally. Its regional revenue stood at $596.623 million in 2021. That's projected to rise to $720.484 million in 2025, and then hit $146.2 million by 2033. The regional CAGR for Europe, that's calculated at 4.773%.
Okay, 4.77%. So similar story to North America. In a way, big market size, but a CGR, again, just a bit below that global 5.2%. Are there specific European countries that stand out in the data? Either big players or maybe some surprising growth stories?
Yes, the report does break it down and highlights a few things. Germany is noted as the largest single market in Europe by revenue. It started at $134.24 million in 2021, projected to reach $257.364 million by 2033. And its CAGR is interesting, 5.543%. So Germany's growth is actually forecast above the global average.
Oh, no. Okay.
But then you have the United Kingdom. It's smaller than Germany in total size, but it's projected to have the highest CAGR among the European countries listed here, 6.049%.
Wow.
Yeah, growing from about $101 million in 2021 to a forecast $204 million in 2033. Other notables, France is growing from around $57 million to just over $100 million by 2033. Italy has a CAGR just over the global average at 5.208%, reaching $96 million from $52.5 million. Then there's Russia, growing from $85 million to about $133 million, and Spain from roughly $39 million to $63 million. The data also gives numbers for Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and a rest of Europe category, so it shows pretty broad activity.
Right, so even within what we might think of as a mature market like Europe, you've got these pockets, the UK, Germany projected for growth that beats the regional, sometimes even the global average. It really underlines how important local factors must be. Okay, let's turn our attention now to Asia Pacific. APAC often comes up when we talk about rapid market expansion. Is that what we're seeing here for ventilating storm doors?
Oh, absolutely. And dramatically so, according to this data. The Asia-Pacific market was valued at $429.15 million back in 2021, but it's projected for really explosive growth, rising to $938.499 million by 2033.
Wow.
That translates to a regional CAGR for Asia-Pacific of 6.692%. The report itself calls this remarkable, and yeah, it's the highest regional CAGR we've seen so far.
Okay, nearly 6.7% CGR. That is a significant jump. It points to some powerful drivers at play.
Right.
What are the key markets or, the forces fueling this within APAC?
Well, China leads in terms of revenue size. It was about $174 million in 2021, projected to reach almost $385 million by 2033. So very strong growth there.
Mm-hmm.
But the report specifically highlights India for what it calls impressive performance. Now, India started smaller than China in 2021, around $53 million, but it's projected to reach $145.467 million by 2033. And get this, the CAGR for India is projected at 8.753%.
Whoa, 8.75%.
Exactly. The report notes this is the highest CAGR among all the specific countries mentioned globally in this data set.
That just jumps off the page, doesn't
It
it?
really does. Other key markets in the region showing good growth are Japan, going from about $71 million to $140 million, South Korea, $39 million, up to nearly $79 million. And Australia is also mentioned for...
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
Up to nearly $79 million. And Australia is also mentioned for strong growth in the summary, going from about $27 million to over $66 million by 2033. The data also covers Singapore, Southeast Asia as a whole, Taiwan, and the rest of APAC, all showing pretty substantial growth projections.
India's CAGR really is outstanding. That kind of figure over 8.7% suggests, well, maybe really significant shifts in building practices or consumer demand, perhaps local innovation kicking in strongly compared to the more established markets. Okay, let's move on. South America. How does that market compare? Size, trajectory?
South America is smaller than the regions we've just discussed, but still showing solid growth potential. The market there was $129.792 million in 2021, and it's set to grow to $250.01 million by 2033. Within the region, Brazil leads the pack. It accounted for nearly $50 million, 49.710 through 2M in 2021, and is projected to hit over $101 million by 2033, making it the largest market there.
Right.
After Brazil, you've got Argentina growing from about $22.5 million to nearly $47 million. Colombia is going from roughly $13 million to $23 million. Peru from $10.5 million to over $19 million. And Chile from around $9.7 million to $18.5 million. The rest of South America also adds a decent chunk, increasing from $24 million to over $41 million by 2033.
Okay, so steady growth across the board there led by Brazil. What about the Middle East? What does the data show us for that region?
The Middle East market is projected to grow from $104.671 million in 2021 up to $184.623 million in 2033. Saudi Arabia is the largest contributor there, according to this data. It started at about $39 million in 2021 and is projected to reach over $71 million, 71.449 M by 2033. Turkey follows, growing from around $23.5 million to nearly $41 million, and the UAE shows a pretty significant jump, relatively speaking, from about $14.3 million to over $29 million by 2033. The report also mentions Egypt, Qatar, and a rest of Middle East category, all showing projected increases as well.
Interesting developments there too, especially that UAE jump. Okay, last region, Africa. What trends are we seeing on the African continent for these doors?
Africa is another region showing really robust projected growth, actually quite similar in rate to Asia Pacific. The regional market starts at $77.4563 million in 2021. It's expected to climb to nearly $100 million, 99.996 Mehmet by 2025, and then reach $165.391 million by 2033.
Okay.
Now, this translates to a regional CAGR for Africa of 6.492%. That makes it the second highest regional growth rate, right after Asia Pacific.
Wow, over 6.4%? That's significant.
It is. Within Africa, South Africa represents the largest market currently, starting at just over $30 million in 2021 and projected to rise to almost $60 million, 59.5408 M, by 2033. However, Nigeria is highlighted for particularly robust growth. It starts smaller, around $20 million, 19.9837 M in 2021, but is forecast to reach over $46 million by 2033. And the report summary specifically calls out Nigeria for its strong growth potential alongside China, India, and Australia.
Right.
The rest of Africa category also shows strong growth, expected to more than double from about $27 million to nearly $60 million by 2033.
A CAGR over 6.4% for Africa, that's definitely an indicator, mirroring that high potential we saw in APAC.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. We've gone through a lot of numbers, region by region, country by country. What does this all mean? What are the key takeaways, the bigger picture for you, our listener, from this deep dive into ventilating storm doors?
Well, the main story from the source is definitely positive global growth. That 5.2% global CAGR sets the overall tone. But, digging into the regions really shows where the action is, so to speak. Asia Pacific and Africa clearly stand out as the projected growth leaders in terms of rate. Their CAGRs are significantly higher than North America or Europe. And the source points to specific countries, India, China, Nigeria, Australia, as really driving that momentum.
Right, those were the ones highlighted.
Exactly. But it's also important to note that the data shows those established markets, Europe and North America, while maybe growing a bit slower overall, they still represent huge chunks of revenue. They're steadily contributing to the market's expansion. So why should you, listening right now, care about ventilating storm doors? Well, because markets like this, even specific ones, they act like little windows into bigger trends. The growth patterns, especially that accelerated growth in places like APAC and Africa, it suggests increasing demand, possibly linked to, well, all sorts of things, maybe urbanization, changing building codes, more focus on energy efficiency or indoor air quality, maybe just evolving consumer tastes for comfort and ventilation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The source mentions increasing demand and innovation as key drivers, and the different regional numbers seem to show where those factors might be hitting hardest. It's just a fascinating snapshot of how things like global development, maybe even climate adaptation needs, and consumer preferences are shaping even these seemingly narrow markets. And thinking about those really varied growth rates, we saw, India at over 8.7%, Nigeria over 6%, the UK also strong at 6% compared to, say, the US at 4%. It makes you wonder, and this is maybe something to think about beyond the raw data, the source mentions innovation as a driver along with demand. So what specific kinds of innovations or maybe unique local needs and demands could be fueling that much faster growth in places like India or Nigeria? Are they leapfrogging in some way or adopting different solutions compared to the more established markets like Germany or the US?
That is a great question to ponder. What does that innovation look like on the ground in those high-growth areas? It really shows how looking closely at market data, even for storm doors, can spark some genuinely interesting questions about broader global dynamics. Thanks for taking us through all that detail. And that concludes this deep dive.
Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're opening the door, so to speak, on a topic you might walk past every day.
Literally walk past.
Exactly.
That.
We're talking about ventilating storm doors. Maybe not the flashiest home improvement topic, but there's actually a lot going on there.
There really is. It's quite interesting when you dig in.
And we've got some great insights to work with today, mainly from analysis by Cognitive Market Research. They've really looked closely at this market.
Yeah, they've laid out the key factors pretty clearly.
So our plan is to unpack that. What's pushing these doors forward, what's holding them back, and what kind of, cool innovations are we seeing?
Basically giving you the inside track on this specific part of home improvement.
Right. It's one of those things, a door seems simple, but it connects to bigger trends.
Yeah.
Tech, energy, how we want to live. You'll probably see your own front door a bit differently after this.
It's a good case study, I think, in how even established products adapt. It's not just a slab of metal or glass anymore.
Okay, let's start there then. The basics. What exactly is a ventilating storm door? Why the focus now?
Well, at its core, it's that secondary outer door. Sits outside your main entry door.
Primarily for weather protection, originally.
Right. But the ventilating part is key. It means you can easily switch between a glass panel, usually for insulation or bad weather, and a screen panel for airflow.
Ah, so you get the protection and the breeze?
Exactly. And that flexibility, that dual function, is why market analysts like Cognitive Market Research are paying attention now. It offers more control over your home's environment right at the entrance.
Okay, control makes sense. So what's actually driving homeowners to install these more often these days? The research points to a few key things, right? First up, energy efficiency.
Yes, that's a major one. And maybe slightly counterintuitive, adding another door for efficiency.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, think about your main door, even a really good one. It's a big opening. It moves. It's a common spot for small air leaks, drafts. A well-fitted storm door creates an insulating pocket of air between it and your main door. It seals off those little gaps.
Like a buffer zone.
Precisely. So it reduces drafts, boosts the thermal performance of that whole entryway. The research highlights this leads to less energy needed for heating and cooling.
Which means lower energy bills. Always a plus. People are definitely focused on that, saving money, reducing their, carbon footprint.
And this ties directly into another massive trend the research flags.
The home renovation boom?
Exactly. That market is huge globally. Think over $900 billion.
Wow. So how do storm doors fit into that picture? Are they a big-ticket reno item?
Not necessarily big ticket, and that's part of their appeal. They're seen as a relatively smart, cost-effective upgrade within a larger renovation, or even as a standalone project.
Adds curb appeal, I imagine.
Instantly, the first impression. But it's also functional protection, especially in a renovation context, if you've just dropped serious money on a beautiful new main door.
You want to protect that investment.
Right. The storm door shields it from rain, snow, sun damage, even just daily wear and tear. So it preserves the look and life of your more expensive main door.
That's a really practical angle. Protect the asset. Okay, so energy savings, leveraging the reno market.
What's the third driver? Something about lifestyle.
Yeah, it's about how people want to feel inside their homes. Think more natural light, more fresh air.
Okay, how does a storm door help there?
Well, many are full view now, meaning mostly glass. They let sunlight pour into what can often be a...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
meaning mostly glass. They let sunlight pour into what can often be a darker entryway or hallway.
Brightens things up.
Definitely. And then there's the ventilation aspect, the screen. You swap out the glass, or often now just slide it away.
We'll get to the tech later, yeah.
Right. But you open it up to breezes, you get that cross ventilation, you can hear what's going on outside, get that fresh air feeling. But crucially, without letting in the bugs or leaves or clouds of pollen.
Ah, fresh air without the pests. That's a key selling point. Improves comfort, indoor air quality. In a really simple, direct way. So you've got these three things lining up. Saving energy, smart renovation value, and that desire for a brighter, airier, more comfortable home.
Seems like a strong case. But obviously, it's not all smooth sailing. The market research must point out some challenges, right? Why don't we see them on every single house?
There are definitely hurdles. And one of the big ones, maybe surprisingly, comes from the primary entry doors themselves. They've gotten really good.
Wait, really? So the main door is getting so advanced it makes the storm door less necessary?
In some ways, yes. Modern main doors, especially fiberglass and steel ones, have much better insulation and weather sealing built in than, say, older wooden doors.
Okay.
So the research suggests that this can reduce the perceived need for that extra insulating layer a storm door provides, especially perhaps in warmer climates, where intense cold isn't the main issue.
Right. If your main door already does a great job blocking drafts, the energy-saving argument for the storm door feels a bit weaker. Interesting. What else is holding things back?
Aesthetics. This is a big one. People invest a lot in their front door. It's a statement piece, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful wood grain, decorative glass, unique color.
Yeah, it's the focal point of the front of the house often.
Exactly. So the idea of covering that up with what might be seen as a more functional, maybe less attractive storm door, that's a real sticking point for homeowners focused on curb appeal. They worry it will clash or just hide the main feature.
Totally get that. You don't want to put a plain utility item over your carefully chosen design element. And the last restraint, is it cost?
Cost plays into it, but it's more the installation, the complexity and the cost associated with getting it done right.
So it's not just buying the door off the shelf.
Not if you want it to work properly.
Yeah.
For the weather sealing to be effective, and for those moving parts, the glass, the screen to operate smoothly without sticking or gaps, it needs to be installed correctly.
Which often means professional installation.
Often, yes. And that adds cost and coordination. Could be a barrier for the avid DIYer or someone trying to keep renovation costs really tight.
Okay, so challenges from better main doors, worries about looks, and the hassle or cost of installation. Those are significant headwinds. But the market's obviously not standing still. What's changing? What are the key trends or innovations the research highlights?
Probably the most significant innovation mentioned is the widespread move to retractable screen technology.
Right, you hinted at that, like the screen away designs the source mentions. How does that work for the homeowner day to day? Is it easier?
Well, much easier. Instead of having two separate heavy panels, glass and screen, that you have to physically lift out, swap, and store.
Which is a real pain, honestly. Where do you even put the panel you're not using?
Exactly. With retractable systems, the screen is built right in. It rolls up, usually into the top of the door frame, kind of a window shade, hidden away when you want the full glass view.
And when you want air.
You just slide the glass panel down or sideways and pull the screen down or across to cover the opening. It's effortless. Click, slide, done.
That makes the ventilating part so much more practical. You'd actually use it, rather than thinking, ugh, I have to wrestle with the panels.
Precisely. It addresses a major usability issue and makes the core benefit, easy ventilation, much more appealing. Big upgrade.
Okay, so smarter design for convenience. What about security? Is a storm door just seen as another barrier, or are they adding real security features?
They are definitely adding features. Manufacturers are positioning them now as an additional layer of security, not just weather protection.
Interesting. What kind of features are we talking about? The research mentioned specifics.
Yes, things like security glass options that are much tougher to break than standard glass. They mention non-removable hinges, so the door can't just be lifted off from the outside.
Okay.
And multi-point locking systems are becoming more common. Instead of just locking at the handle, it engages bolts at multiple points along the door frame, top, bottom, middle, makes it much harder to pry open.
Wow, that really does change the equation. It's not just a flimsy screen door anymore. It's becoming a serious security component.
It's a significant evolution, yeah.
And finally, how is the industry tackling that aesthetic issue? The worry about covering up a nice main door.
That's where personalization has really taken off. The market's responded directly to that concern.
So it's not just white aluminum anymore.
Oh, far from it. The research points to a huge range of options now. Lots of factory-applied colors, so you can match your trim or your main door, or choose a contrasting accent color.
Okay.
And then there's hardware finishes, satin nickel, matte black, oil-rubbed bronze. You can match the hardware to your main door's handle set or your exterior lights.
And glass. Is it just plain glass?
Nope. Decorative glass options, too.
Yeah.
Different patterns, textures, maybe beveling, things that can complement the style of the main door rather than just obscuring it.
That tackles the aesthetic objection head on. You can actually design the storm door to enhance the entryway, make it look more finished, more intentional.
Exactly. It allows it to be integrated into the home's overall design scheme, not fight against it.
Okay, this has actually been surprisingly fascinating. We've gone through the cognitive market research insights, the big drivers pushing demand.
Energy efficiency, the renovation boom, and those lifestyle desires for light and air.
Right, and balance that with the restraints.
The improving tech in main doors, those aesthetic concerns, and the installation hurdles.
But then looked at how the market's responding with these key trends.
Yeah, the retractable screens for convenience, the beefed-up security features, and all the personalization options for style.
So the big picture takeaway seems to be that these doors are evolving. They're moving beyond just being a basic weather shield.
Definitely. The trends show they're becoming smarter, safer, more stylish. It's shifting the perception, making them a more desirable feature that adds value in multiple ways. Energy, protection, security, comfort, and even aesthetics now.
Turning a sort of utilitarian item into something that really contributes to the home's performance and feel.
It really is. Which kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, thinking about all this, the drivers, the challenges, the way technology and design are changing these doors, how does it maybe shift your perspective on something as seemingly simple as your own front door?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it less as just an entrance now and more as this, dynamic component that's actively interacting with your home's energy use, its security, even the light and air inside?
It's definitely more complex than you might think at first glance. Lots to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai